while, you will think about,
Go ahead,
yes,
go
it is
ahead.
being recorded. So the fascinating part of it is that India was one of the early countries that understood that population control is a really important issue. And some think that it was because we had a woman who led India's health policy for a long time, including representing India in international fora. So perhaps having a health minister, a person who is advocating health in the family, was a significant feature. Now, as good economists, you will know it's very easy to think of correlation as causation, but here's an important factoid there that we can go back and see why it was that this was an important issue. Also, with this is a private element to it. Like with many things just before independence and just after independence, a lot of policy was determined by large industrial houses and capitalists, to put it very, very simply. Uh, so, one aspect of it is that the opportunity to make money on condoms came to a man who was seen as quite opportunistic when it came to make money, T.T. Krishnamachari. And those of you who don't know him, he has a colorful history, both politically, in his own political life, as well as what happened in his three terms in office as finance minister. Some of the embarrassments that he faced included in that. The most famous being the Mundra scandal. So the story is really of this man who felt that there is a great opportunity to import condoms. That was his first idea because they were not manufactured in India. So in the 40s, the most famous brand of condoms was Durex in the world. 1939 was when the brand Durex was formally registered in the UK and came to be sold in India as well, thanks to Mr. T.T. Krishnamachari. Initially, it was sold under the brand name Durapac, Durapac, and then it became Durex. Initially, it was quite low use. Also, it was quite a crude thing. And therefore, it was unlikely that people were really keen to use it. And keep that in mind that 80 years on, our usage is still very, very low. Uh, and to think about how it is that the government conceived of this idea and what it wanted to do with it, the government did virtually nothing other than saying, okay, you can distribute the condoms and you can import them and do what you want with it. It was typical of government policy at the time, which is, we have bigger things to worry about. Let's not worry about condoms. But it did a few very, very interesting things. One is that it understood the issues of access very, very clearly. And so, even though Kamraj was a very good name, and perhaps it would have had more success had it been called Kamraj, they chose Nirod. And therein lies the first hint of problem. And that is, what does Nirod? Nirod means to interrupt, to prevent. And so you have the first connotation of a brand, which is something undesirable. You're preventing something undesirable. And you have to think back that culturally, uh, everybody is asked, so when is the good news? So now saying that you're using something that will prevent an undesirable event creates a first social barrier and cultural barrier. This is in the 1940s. And there was therefore very low uptake of condoms, very difficult to distribute, very difficult to access. At which point in time, again, ingenuity is that they decided, well, we have to get this to people. And after giving it a really bad name, they came up with a very good idea, which is that you can go to the post office and get it for virtually free, just for a few paise, which meant that it became really accessible. So everybody who could get access to a postage stamp would get access to a condom. Also, don't forget, the post office was the hub of activity. It was also the telegraph office. It was the major source of communication. It became the major source of gossip because that's where everybody's letters get read. The postman arrives. So it became a hub of activity. And it was a very good idea, therefore, to think of this as easy access. Somewhere along the way, people decided that it was a bad idea and it got discontinued. And therefore, you didn't have condoms in post offices. I know this will all seem very strange to all you people who are in the class, but those were days when these things did happen. And there are some good ideas there. Now, not much happened in terms of increased usage and sales for a very long time. And that didn't deter Mr. Krishnamachari. He thought, okay, the problem is not this, the problem is something else. And so he said that there is a future to this, even though it doesn't look very promising. So he contacted the manufacturers of these condoms and said, listen, India is the place where you should manufacture condoms. And they all laughed at him because they said there's no chance in hell that you guys can manufacture anything, which was entirely true. So he said, okay, I will import these machines and I will make them in India. And that is how manufacturing of condoms started in the 1960s. And it's very interesting that in 1966, 67, when condom manufacturing actually started, 64, sorry, when condom manufacturing actually started by the TTK group, they sold 30 million condoms. Now, it might not seem like a lot, but our population at that time was 400 million. So it gives you a sense of low usage of condoms. It is only much later, 1968, when the offtake just wasn't rising, that T.T. Krishnamachari's brother, who was then married to a lady who was the Swedish ambassador council to India, got a Swedish fund, government fund, to finance 80 million condoms and then gave them free to the government of India to say, here it is, take it free and please give it to everyone. Again, it's an interesting, very interesting marketing mechanism, increasing access, getting your brand to people. And from there took off really the condom story in India, that in 1964, we have 30 million condoms. In 1968, we have the 30 that being manufactured plus 80 additional million condoms that are being thrown into the market. So suddenly the market grows in a way that nobody imagined. At about the same time, government felt, yes, now that the private individuals have gone off and built this market, it's a very good idea. So they established Hindustan Latex Limited. So a classic government style, right, at that time, that if anything is a good idea, public sector should be doing it. So they established Hindustan Latex Limited. And where did they establish it? They established it in Trivandrum. Why in Trivandrum? Because most of the rubber that's grown in India is in Kerala. So they felt, this is the perfect place to have a condom factory. And in 68, I think, was when the factory started producing condoms. So now you have a situation where you had a private player who created this market, and you have a PSU with unlimited amount of money stepping into this market. I'll come back to the story of Hindustan Latex and what it has done recently and what it's done to the market. But we'll go back to the story of, therefore, what happened. After 68, what happened? After 68, strangely, the market didn't grow very much. And to put it in context, today's market for condoms is about 2.2 billion. which means we are selling 2.2 billion condoms. But the net sales from that is only $183 million. So I'll let you do the conversion, but it's only about $183 million. So it is not a huge market for anyone to be really interested in because we've just not grown it. So with a population of 1.38 billion, we're only selling 2.2 billion condoms. Now, if you look at the way the brand was promoted for a long time, it was largely government promoted. How was it promoted by government? By having these ads, which were very cheesy, and most people looked away when the ads came on TV or on radio. Nobody spoke about it. Condom was seen as a dirty thing. And last week when we were discussing, Saili and I, with Ashish, I was saying it is similar to female hygiene products like sanitary pads. It's treated in the same way. Yeah. And the history of this goes back to that time. And nothing much has changed in 80 years. From 1940 to now, nothing much has changed. We still treat it in the same way. Now, during the 70s and the 80s, we had some other small private players wanting to get into the market, but largely the market was two players, Hindustan Latex and TTK. TTK had a joint venture with the London Rubber Company, which were the pioneers of the Durex brand. And that continued for a long time, to the extent that until 2012, TTK LIG joint venture was the largest producer of condoms in the world. And it exported 1.4 billion condoms annually. Now, all that was driven to a large extent by two things. One, the AIDS crisis, when suddenly everybody looked for condoms as the first way of dealing with AIDS. And therefore, a lot of money, international money, came into funding governments that wanted to promote condom usage. And so you found NACO was formed in India, National AIDS Control Organization, which funded entirely by the Global Fund. And they started procuring condoms and distributing condoms. So now you had an additional market where there was none before. Earlier, it was primary healthcare centers. The post office was finished, primary healthcare centers. And that was it. And you could buy condoms from a medical store. The interesting part is, again, that it follows this buying from a medical store, follows this idea and follows the brand, which is Nirod, which is preventing a disease. And that mentality continued with NACO. So again, NACO promoted condoms as preventing AIDS. And so for the longest time, we've suffered this thing about a condom being preventing a disease. And so you ask, therefore, what is the outcome of that? The outcome of that, strangely, is that the legislature decided that, see, it's preventing a disease, therefore it must be a drug. Therefore, we'll regulate it like a drug. So you had an idea which was ill-conceived. Then legislature jumps onto it and says, clearly it's preventing a disease, therefore we should regulate it as a drug. And so you have this curious situation where a condom is inserted into the Drugs Act as a drug. It is regulated. There are 7 pages in the Drugs Act on the specifications of a condom. So, and it has everything. And in true style of a bureaucrat, the level of detail is outstanding. So it is the only device which has a picture in the Drugs Act. There is nothing else. There are no pictures in the Drugs Act. Okay, it's about 600 pages. But there is a picture of a condom. It also says how long a condom can be. And it can be only one of two lengths, 170 millimeters or 180 millimeters. And it can be only two widths, 46 millimeters or 53 millimeters. So now it explains how bureaucrats think, right? They've decided that if you're an Indian man, we have determined your size. And there can be one of two sizes. Now, as the reality of it is, if you want to go and buy a condom in the market, there is only one size. So now you have to think, this wise person who worked out that all Indian males fit one size. So that was your first thing, that you decided that every Indian male will be comfortable using a condom that is 170 millimeters long and 46 millimeters in wide. So that is decided. And then you think, why is it that people are not using condoms? It starts from here, right? That you have this, that you have to now fit the size. So if you want to use the condom, you have to fit the size of the condom. That is the first problem. It doesn't stop there, though. If you are interested, you should read Schedule R of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, just as weekend reading, because it treats the condom like a balloon. And it is true that condom is nothing but a balloon. It is just rubber. So it is really a balloon. But somebody must have told a bureaucrat this. After all, condom is only a balloon. Please don't regulate it. To which the bureaucrat's response was, the condom is a balloon, therefore I will regulate it like a balloon. And so we have a very interesting set of quality standards for condoms. What are these quality standards? One, that it shall only be made of rubber. So somebody in Delhi has decided that all condoms shall only be made of rubber. So you cannot make them about using anything else, even if it is better than rubber. And to just give you a sense of where that is, the most expensive condoms and the most pleasant ones to use, which don't feel like a balloon, are made with a compound called polyisoprene. And the idea behind polyisoprene is that it feels like silk. It is thin, it doesn't feel like rubber, and therefore you're unlikely to even feel it. But we can't make it in India for India. We make it in India for the rest of the world. But we can't sell it in India because the regulations say a condom can only be made of rubber. So that's your first interesting outcome of a discussion with a bureaucrat, that it can only be made of rubber.
So,
I've already...
Murli,
Yes.
I'm really sorry for interrupting you, but is it possible for an Indian abroad to buy a condom made of polyisoprene and bring it back into the country?
Of course it is. I have done it many times.
So it is actually the case that an Indian company will manufacture it, it will be exported abroad, and India will have to go abroad, buy it, and get it back into the country. That is legal, but buying it here is not.
Yeah, you can't manufacture a polyisoprene condom to sell in India because it requires approval under the Drugs Act. But you can manufacture it for export. And as I said, India was the first to manufacture polyisoprene condoms and sell it around the world. And very few countries in the world have this technology. And very few countries actually produce it. So if you went to London and went to Boots and you saw the whole range of condoms and you looked at the most expensive, that would be polyisoprene. It would be made in India. And the brand was called Silk then. It's called Avanti now. And you can buy it duty-free at Heathrow and bring it back to India. But it's most people aren't going to make that huge effort, right, of going to London to buy condoms.
Yeah.
But this is the reality of it. It is manufactured in Chennai. So here is the interesting part of it. So going back to this, that the bureaucrat decided that if it's a balloon, then we will have testing as if it's a balloon. So there are two interesting tests that are in the law. So it is not some thing on the side. It's not some notification. It is in the law. One is called the water leakage test, which means that a drug inspector will come into a factory, select sample from a batch several hundred condoms, and he will fill them with water. Now, how much water? 300 milliliters of water. And then close it and hold it for 1 minute to check if there is any seepage or micro droplets. Now, you have to ask, which condom is going to hold 300 milliliters of liquid? I mean, to put it in context, that is the size and volume of a can of Coca-Cola.
Correct.
Let me just think about it. You have 170 millimeters having to expand to hold a can of Coca-Cola and not break. And it has to be liquid. So it is not stretchability. It is called water leakage. So to see if water leaks from that, that is the first test. The second test, it gets funnier, but I can't do much about it. It's called the bursting volume test. So it's like you take a balloon and blow, right? At some point in time, it bursts. You have to do the same thing with a condom now. So what you have to do is take a device that is a rod, and there's a picture of that rod in the regulations. Put this condom on it, and then pressurize it with air. So, I'll read to you because I can't make this up. The test procedure is in the law. It says, unroll the condom, hang it on the rod, affix it to the mount, inflate with air at the rate of 0.4 to 0.5 liters per second. That's half a liter a second of air is going into that. That is about 24 to 30 liters a minute. Measure and note the bursting volume in liters rounded to the nearest half liter, and the bursting pressure rounded to the nearest 0.1 kPa. This is in the regulations, that now you have to fill it with water and test it, and then you have to blow air in it to see how big it expands before it bursts. This is the regulation in the Drugs Act, which sets out the standard for condoms. So now you think, am I actually making a condom? Because it doesn't have any features of a condom, right? It holds water and it inflates. Those are the two features of a condom now.
It's bizarre.
But it's true. So,
Yeah.
So now you have manufacturers making balloons. And then you wonder why nobody in the market is actually buying it. Because frankly, the use for a condom and the testing and the regulation of it are completely disconnected. So the bureaucrat thinks it is kind of one of those, those guys who cycle, they have camelbacks, where they have a pouch which has water in it, and it's collapsible, so it's not a hard bottle. It's just a bag in which you fill water and you can keep hydrating when you cycle. So if people who watch cycling races, Tour de France, for example, you'll see them with this thing. It's called a camelback. So a condom effectively has become something like that how much water can it hold without bursting, and how much can you blow into it like a balloon without bursting. So these are the two tests in the law for a condom. So now you have to go back and think, therefore, what is the market for it? Now, and why it ever came into the Drugs Act. Now, I said that earlier that because it was seen as preventing a disease, it came into the Drugs Act. But very interestingly, before it came into the Drugs Act, in a matter completely disconnected to the use of condoms, there was a case in Calcutta which then went to the Supreme Court, where it was about the trademark Durex. And one of the judges there asked the question, this is 1958, asked the question, why should Durex be registered as a medical device? So there are classifications for trademarks, and Durex was registered as medical devices, medical, surgical, all of those devices. And I'll read because it's so clear. He said, this is Justice Mukherjee, who then went on to the Supreme Court. He was in the Calcutta High Court, but a similar concept you will find subsequently said by the Supreme Court. But I found this quote very interesting. It says, I should have thought that these contraceptives over which the present dispute arises were neither surgical, nor dental, nor veterinary instruments, nor apparatus. But I am told that by a certain stretch and strain on the word medical, they may perhaps be brought thereunder, though I am greatly puzzled how they are medical. I couldn't find a better description of the criticism of the whole regulatory regime in the way it has been crafted. And this is by a judge of the Calcutta High Court, who subsequently became a Supreme Court judge. So it will tell you the absurdity of regulation. And now if you look at the absurdity of the regulation, it bears no correlation with the use, and therefore in order to comply with the regulation, the condom is no longer a condom. It has become a balloon. And now you wonder why it is that people are not using it as a condom. Now, we don't know what they're using it for, but the poor sales definitely show that not many people are really using it very much. So it tells you how it is that you take one good idea, you find some strange simile, condoms like a balloon, then it becomes legislation, then the legislation then has specifications, quite unnecessary, to make it a balloon. Then manufacturers have to conform and make balloons, not condoms. And then people are not going to use them like condoms because they're really balloons. To give you some idea of why it is that this is absurd, if you look at the regulation of copper T, I don't know how many of you know what a copper T is, but it is a little device that is inserted into the vagina of women to prevent pregnancy. Okay, so this is a real medical device. It is going to be virtually permanently inside a woman's body. Okay, and it is made of a product that is reactive. Copper is reactive.
Correct.
Latex is not.
Yeah.
Neither is polyisoprene. So you're taking a highly reactive substance like copper. It is manufactured at the mass scale. It's inserted into a vulnerable part of a woman's body. And you would think there should be some regulation, right? Common sense. But it actually has no standards. So you have 7 pages on condoms, and you have 2 lines on copper T. And I'll read that to you. It says, contraceptive device copper T shall conform to the Indian standards laid down from time to time by the Bureau of Indian Standards. That is all it is.
Which is what?
Not specified. That's
Not specified at all.
So whatever is the standard that BIS comes up with, it will conform to it from time to time. And if you see the standards for other medical devices, stents, it's going to be in your heart, right? There it's even better. It says that if you have standards, comply with it. Otherwise, the manufacturer's own standards. So I decide my own standard and I say I am compliant with it. I am making it according to the standards and I am complying with it. So if you make a heart valve, if you make a stent, any implant, then it's okay. But for a condom, we have 7 pages of how we are going to regulate it. So it gives you a sense of, therefore, what is happening and why people are not using it. It's not a difficult thing to figure out because it was never made to be used as a condom. The manufacturer is manufacturing it to a spec that is never going to be used as a condom. I mean, which percentage of the market of Indian males is going to fit that size? And how did they determine it? I mean, somebody must have come out with this number, right? They took an average. If you take an average, then you're guaranteed that nobody is going to fit it.
Exactly.
Correct.
So Ashish can explain statistics, but an average is such that you could effectively be nobody fitting that 170 millimeters because it's an average. So if you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the average is 5.5. And there is nobody at 5.5. So the chap at 5 is too small, the chap at 6 is too large, and the others really are never going to use it. Ashish, you want to explain how averages don't actually mean that the average man exists?
In fact, first year students are just about going through the exact same process right now. I'm talking about statistics here.
Then please
is
explain the average of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is actually 5.5.
5.5, and therefore, yes.
And 1 and 10 are at a loss, basically.
No,
And everyone else is at
Everyone
a loss.
is at a loss.
Everyone is
at a loss.
Exactly.
Because nobody is 5.5.
No.
The nearest you have is 5 and 6. And neither of them will. And if you see the variation, the variation is not half.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
So the amount of
The standard deviation. Yeah.
Yeah.
the standard deviation is 0.045 millimeters, which is nothing. You can't. It's a hair's breadth. Is the variation allowed? There is also thickness. So here is where, just so that we covered everything. You got length, width, and thickness also.
Thickness.
So you can't have a condom which is too thick. You can't have a condom which is too thin. So we will decide it has to be 0.0045 millimeters to 0.0075 millimeters. Now, how did they come up with this? Nobody knows. And so you have every specification possible for a balloon that has been set out. Ashish, you wanted to ask something.
No. So one of the students asked the exact same question that you just ended up answering right now. How did the government collect this data?
Oh,
The answer
there is no data.
No.
Nobody went out. There is no if you see the census form, and I suggest you all see the census form, these kind of measurements are not collected. They collect a lot of data, but this data is not available. And I am not aware of any sample study done throughout the country, across different states and different people, to say that this is the size. And whatever may have been the study, it could not have been one size. I mean,
Exactly.
you don't need to have done a survey to know that there is not one size. I think, most people know that there is not one size.
You would think.
Correct. And clearly the people who wrote it didn't know what the use of a condom was, because you're not going to store water and you're not going to blow bubbles, right? I mean, what are you going to do with it? So the whole concept of it has gone to a completely different plane. And therefore you have condoms that are useless, where 99% of the population cannot use it. Just by its own inherent specification, it is unusable.
So speaking of specifications, Murli, one of the questions that came up was, is this lack of standards in the case of the copper T device? Are all other contraceptive devices except for condoms also just without specification? Is it only condoms that is subject to such stringent measures?
Yes.
Excellent.
So look at the other contraceptive devices. So for example, you have those rings, intrauterine rings.
Yeah.
So the standard for contraceptive tubal ring, as it's called, I'll read it to you. Contraceptive device tubal ring shall conform to the Indian standards laid down from time to time by the Bureau of Indian Standards. That is it. Again, this is a metal device inserted into the vagina by a doctor. It is not something you can slip on by yourself.
Yeah.
And for that, there is a one-line standard, which is the Bureau of Indian Standards, whatever that may be from time to time. Okay, so they're okay with it. It doesn't really matter. But for this, there is very important that we have standards. Now,
I mean, I'm laughing. I'm sure everybody is, but it's tragic. There's no other word for it. It's insane.
Bizarre. I mean,
it's a good lesson in
precisely. Yeah.
a poor understanding of every aspect of that product
Absolutely.
and the market. I mean, there isn't one aspect of it they have got right. You look at access, it is only available. This is the next thing I wanted to come to. It's available in the PHC. It is available through the ASHA worker, who is this unpaid, poorly trained, enthusiastic village volunteer.
Accredited social health activist.
Who is supposed to go out and help with health issues.
Yeah.
Now, you're asking her to go and sell these condoms. So she's given them for virtually nothing. And then she goes and gives it to households where she goes and visits. And the price of that is 1 rupee for 3 condoms. Now, if there is so much aversion to the condom, giving it for 1 rupee, and even if you give it free, doesn't mean people are actually going to use it. Interestingly, a few years ago, the government decided that, Nirod is a bad name. Why don't we call it ASHA? All these ASHA workers completely boycotted this idea and said, listen, effectively, you're giving us the name of a condom. So we are the ASHA workers, and you're saying this brand of condoms is not Nirod anymore. It is ASHA. So they refused to sell it. And amongst the community, there were lots of people who used this as a jibe against ASHA workers to say, after all, they are condoms. So then there was this huge exercise to get rid of that name and bring it back to Nirod. But if you look at the packaging of the Nirod condom, and there have been surveys done on this, it's not something that you want to use. So we come to access, right? So you have to either go to a PHC, in which case you're admitting that there is something wrong with you, you're unhealthy, or you go to a medical store, again you're admitting that there's something wrong with you. It is not displayed, so you then have to ask very surreptitiously, and then you don't have a choice. It is whatever that medical store attendant gives you, and he will put it in a brown cover and give it to you. And then good luck to you. If you've got something that you don't want, you have to keep trying. It's like a lottery ticket buying a condom, right? You're handing over money and hoping you get the right condom. That is your first problem. Then you have this challenge with use, because 99% of the people are not going to fit you. Then you wonder why it is that people are not using condoms. So they don't know what it is, except when they go and buy it. So you have to pay to try. Then you get it, you try it, it definitely doesn't work, because that is guaranteed, it will not work. Then you're hoping that people will keep trying when it doesn't work. No product is going to be able to survive that, right?
Correct.
That you keep paying money and hope the next one fits, or the next one is what you want. I mean, no product is going to work like this. At some point in time, you may do it once, you may do it twice, but it's unlikely that you will pay 3 times for something that doesn't work.
Yep.
So here is your problem. So now you see 1.3 billion population, 2 million condoms sold. And those 2 million includes all of the freebies. So we don't know if they're actually using it in sex. Let's understand that. It means that there are 2 million out there somewhere. If teenagers are using it for something else, probable. It is cheaper to buy a condom than to buy a balloon. So they might be using it as balloons. And if you see condoms in the JNU campus, they may have been used for something else. And whoever thinks the condom is used for sex clearly has never used a condom. So all those people who are alleging that, that condoms were used for illicit sex on JNU should try on a condom sometime and see how much pleasure they derive from it. Because clearly that's not what the kids are doing with condoms. But I'm not saying this, in a flippant way. I just explained to you why it is that it's not going to work. But to go back to the market, so you have all of these challenges where the government has skewed the market, has intervened in a way that's completely undesirable. You have a public sector undertaking that is the largest now producer of condoms in this country, which is HLL. Remember I mentioned Hindustan Latex. Now they are called Hindustan Life Sciences Limited because now they have expanded into everything. They make the female contraceptive called Mala D, which is very popular and given away free again. They also make sanitary napkins. They also make implants. They want to get into vaccines. So they're doing everything now. So it started off as condom and then they've gone into something else altogether. They have the largest capacity today of 1.8 billion condoms a year. They were meant to supply purely to the government. That was the whole idea of a public sector, right? But then they realized that the private sector is easy money. So now you have a situation where less than half the capacity of Hindustan Latex is used for government. So out of the 1.8 billion condoms that it can make, it only sells about 400 million to government market. Just last year, it has only produced 800 million condoms. So it has still got capacity of 1 billion, which it has not used last year. I'm reading from the annual report of the company. So these are all numbers that they have quoted. So they manufactured 818 million condoms in 2019. Half of that, about 400 million, was given to government. Now look at how the market breaks up. You have government providing free condoms. Where does it get these free condoms from? It buys 400 million from Hindustan Latex. It buys another 300 million. So last year's numbers were that the public market was about 745 million condoms. So 400 million from Hindustan Latex, 345 million through tender. So private manufacturers can tender to government. And it's very random. Some years government will procure, some years government will not. And if you go back and read the newspapers, we had a condom shortage in this country.
Yeah. Oops. I think we just got disconnected. Hopefully he'll join again. Yeah. But okay, so all the questions that have been asked so far, don't worry, I'll work them into the conversation as we go along. This is just, you can see why Saili and I were so eager to have Murli give this talk. One, because it's eye-opening in terms of how screwed up the regulation pertaining to condoms is, but also it's a great example of how we just don't think about markets well enough where bureaucrats are concerned. So in terms of pricing, in terms of distribution, in terms of regulation, in terms of sales, one can go on and on. The laughter apart, and yes, it's a great way to spend Friday evening, but the laughter apart, it really is a great lesson in terms of how you need to understand whatever it is that I and Saili have been teaching you, how it is misapplied in the case of this particular product.
Yeah.
And it's about to get worse. So there are a couple of points that I know Murli is going to bring up that are even more mind-boggling than what we've spoken about so far. But Saili, did you know about the condom challenge? I had no clue. This is the first time
I
hearing
did.
of it.
I did.
I'm very curious to ask Murli if he's heard
He
of
knows,
it.
yeah.
Especially so where was I? There were so many browsers open.
There were two. So there was one
What does snorting a condom through one's nasal cavity mean?
No, I didn't know about that one. I just knew about filling the water using it like a balloon one. I didn't know about the other one.
So Murli, welcome back. I just wanted to. No, you're inaudible, Murli. I'm sorry.
You're on mute.
I don't know if you're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute. Yes.
Yeah, he's on mute.
Sorry,
No.
I don't know what happened. It just rebooted itself.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. 2020, we are used to everything that can go wrong with internet-enabled devices.
No.
So, before we get back, Murli, there's one question that I've been dying to ask you. Have you heard of the condom challenge?
No. What is the
Excellent.
quantum challenge?
All right.
Okay.
So, I'll leave it to you to read it. I just put up the message in the chat window.
बता दो यार.
No, I put it up in the chat window. So, I'll read it out if you like. The condom challenges are two viral internet challenges. The first is a challenge involving snorting a latex condom through one's nasal cavity and into the back of the throat. Don't ask, I don't know. The second is a challenge where a water-filled condom is dropped onto a person's head, typically enveloping the head of the person taking part.
So yeah, like a helmet.
So when you asked what people are doing with the condoms, some of the students said maybe the condom challenge. So who knows? Maybe that's
What
been
explains
happening.
the sales. Yeah, that explains the sales because I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the strange thing is that the specifications are perfect for that.
exactly. That's exactly.
Clearly, somebody has read the specifications
Yeah.
for condoms and decided this is the
Precisely.
use for a condom.
Precisely. Why would anyone else even know that you could fill in a liter of water and drop it on someone's head? So
Absolutely.
A law student, no doubt, Murli, a law
yeah.
student.
JNU.
Right.
Something I learned today.
Yep.
I know.
What kids do with condoms, okay? It's very interesting.
The snorting through the nasal cavity
No.
I can't stop
would
thinking about it.
Would that be harmful? I mean, like, medically, like, why would you? Who would have even tried that? Like, that's my question. How does that become viral? For someone to. Anyway, yeah.
I know. Your expression, Murli, has been basically me for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine this snorting a condom and thinking, perhaps we need to ask emergency doctors.
Yep.
That is the only research that we can do to say whether this is true or it's just one of those things that people have put out there, fake news that there is a condom challenge. I will find out.
We should.
And in the meantime, so this has got to be the worst pun ever, but Yash asks about bureaucrats having skin in the game.
Yes,
so what he means by that is, don't they themselves have problems using the condoms that are regulated by their own rules?
As I said, that nobody who has written the specifications ever intended the condom to be used like this. That is the only thing I can say. That and it explains the reluctance to use condoms, both culturally, socially, and here in this case, in a very practical sense. That if men say that condom is uncomfortable, it cannot be used. It's not really a fun thing. It comes in the way of a pleasurable act. Then clearly they're not going to use it, and therefore it's going to be really difficult to contradict any of this, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how do you say no? It is a fun thing. You must use it, because you just look at it and say it can't be. and there is the big challenge for use of condoms in the way that we find in India, that the market really doesn't exist, and as much as you can try, it's not going to be easy to get people to start using it unless we change the mindset. And we can't change the mindset unless you change the product. There is only that much that marketing can sell. Marketing can get you to buy the first condom, can buy the second condom. But, it's going to be very difficult to get you to buy the third condom after the first two haven't worked for you. So there is a real challenge with trying to even market this. And that's really one of the things I wanted to discuss is, if you look at how condoms have been marketed, initially we went off and said they are barriers, protection against a disease.
Right.
And that continues. Then you have a series of ads that effectively were very cheesy and sleazy, and most people didn't want to see it. At least in public, they didn't want to see it. So you saw the ads of Kama Sutra, which came much later. And then you had ads by HLL, which launched a private brand called Moods. Again, not very pleasant. It was soft porn, basically, what was in those ads. And so again, there was a reluctance to engage with this product altogether. And then you had a ban on advertising effectively. So they took this to the next step, right? That culturally and socially, condom is a dirty thing.
Really?
And so there is a watershed, which means that you can't show a condom ad before 10 p.m. and after 6 a.m. So again, what is the thinking? That you're going to be having sex at night and watching the condom ad. I mean, I don't know what the point is. When are you likely to be watching an ad for a condom? Not when you are in the act of actually sex, right? That's not the time you're going to be watching a condom ad. So again,
Let's hope not.
I'm just saying that, if you think of how regulations start building into killing a product and killing a market, here is one of them. So no newspaper will carry a series of condom ads. Very few have carried. You may have seen a Manforce ad every now and then. But other than that, you don't see many advertisements. The product itself is not displayed. So if you went to a store, went to a retail store, anywhere, it is not displayed. And therefore, most people don't know that there are actually 20 kinds of condoms. Unless you go and search on a Durex website or a Score website, you won't know that there are actually so many kinds of condoms and for a variety of uses. Now, unless somebody sends you some WhatsApp viral forwards telling you that these are the different kinds of condoms, you're never going to know. And so we have a situation where the government procures for the free market. The price that the government pays in that tender is 1 rupee 38 paisa. So what do you think you're going to get for 1 rupee 38 paisa a condom? And who's going to be manufacturing it and being able to sell it at 1 rupee 38 paisa a condom? Now, obviously, it is going to be people who really don't care about the condom, right? Because there is no way in hell that you can manufacture a condom that is meant to be used as a condom for 1 rupee 38 paisa. It's just impossible. So again, you have the situation where you have a bad product at the lowest price. Who do you think is going to be manufacturing it? Not somebody who is selling in the European market, right? That's not the chap who's going to be manufacturing it. It will be a chap who's meeting the specification in the law. And to meet that specification at 1.38, that is what you will get. Again, the product is therefore not going to be used in the market. Now, interestingly, the world has moved on. As with everything else, there are innovations in the condom market. Like any other product, there are constant innovations. So in the rest of the world, you will get various sizes. You will get various shapes. You will get colors, textures, taste, smell, all of that. And there we have also innovated. So you can get pan masala flavored condom, uniquely Indian. You can get kala khatta condom, tasting condom, which is very good. Now, one would have thought that if you're a public sector enterprise and you claim that you're doing R&D, you would have come up with something, right? In 60 years of doing R&D on condoms, you would expect that Hindustan Latex would have come up with something. It even got $1 million from the Gates Foundation to innovate on condoms. Okay, so they got $1 million.
HLL.
HLL got in 2013 from the Gates Foundation, and they called it Next Generation Condom. Very good. Then if you read their annual report, they have a section on R&D. And you would have thought they would have taken that 1 million and done something useful with it, right? That is really innovative. But if you read the 2019 annual report, under the section R&D for condoms, here is what it says. They have developed a yellow color for use on a banana flavored condom. They have also introduced new flavors. What are these new flavors? Kulfi flavor, grape flavor, and honey flavor. This is their paragraph on R&D. I'm reading, I have very poor imagination. So I'm just restricting myself to the facts. I have no imagination. These are the facts. And the annual report of Hindustan Latex is available online. So everybody is welcome to fact check this. And this is their latest report. And it is brightly highlighted in pink, R&D. This is their R&D. They're also claiming that someday in the future, they will have condoms made with graphene.
With graphene.
Graphene. The material that is used for nanotechnology.
Okay.
That is what they have said. That one day we will have condoms made of graphene.
So all of the 1 million just went in coming out with this kulfi and yellow. That's it.
No. We don't know what it was used for. I'm just saying they got 1 million for, and I'm reading. Gates Foundation gave them in 2 tranches, 890 and then 100,000. So total 1 million to develop next generation condoms using graphene. But they have not developed anything so far. In 8 years, they have not developed it yet. There is not even a prototype. What they have done is develop this yellow color. And they're proud to advertise it in their annual report. Now let's look at what the others have done. Okay, we can laugh as much as we want on this, right?
Yeah.
But what have the others done with R&D? So if you again go and check the Durex site or the Score site, you'll find quite a lot of innovation. They have condoms that are pleasure for both partners. They have gels. They have long lasting, which is very interesting. I don't know how many people have some background in chemistry, but a very interesting compound. And again, if you're a fan of old Western movies, nitroglycerine is a very interesting thing. I don't know how many people remember, Ashish, maybe before your time as well, but the Western movies used to have these liquids in bottles.
Yes.
Which would explode.
Liquid explode. Yes, absolutely.
That is nitroglycerine.
Correct.
And that was the precursor to dynamite. Because it was so unstable, the liquid was so unstable that even during transport it would explode.
Yeah.
That's the history of nitroglycerine, and we all know that dynamite came from there. That instead of glycerine, they used toluene, which is a similar organic compound. So from nitroglycerine, we went to dynamite, and then in the Second World War, we used TNT, which is trinitrotoluene. So that is the progress of nitroglycerine. Now we know that one use for it, right? But, innovative as we are, we found many other uses for it. Another use for it is to help during a heart attack. So if a person is suffering from a heart attack, or just to say onset of heart attack, they slip a nitrile pill under his tongue.
Oh, yeah.
That is nitroglycerine.
It's the same compound. Oh,
It is the same compound. So chemists don't distinguish between the two. It's the same nitroglycerine there that
correct.
explodes.
Mhm.
And if you took this nitroglycerine tablet and it deteriorated over time, it will become unstable and it will catch fire.
Oh.
Now, somebody thought of that and said, okay, this is a very good thing. You can put it under your tongue. It dilutes the blood, increases heart action, and therefore, it's very good to save people during a heart attack. Now, as with everything else, somebody thought, okay, this is a very good idea. If you can put it in your mouth, you can put it elsewhere as well. So they took the same idea and coated it on a condom, which meant that it behaves in the same way, which means that it increases blood flow inside the condom. And therefore, you have this fantastic combination of condom and Viagra. And so you will see advertisements for it. It's not obvious, but there is a patent pending. And I was involved in the filing of that patent many years ago, where we came up with this, if it works there and the chemistry is the chemistry, it's going to work in the same way everywhere. If it can be absorbed under your tongue through the mucus, then it can be absorbed in any other part of the body. You can snort it, Ashish. And therefore they said, why not? So now you have condoms that are coated on the inside with nitroglycerine gel. And that therefore you will see the ads for long last or extended whatever play, whatever it's called, the advertisement is called. It's nothing but this, which is that for those who suffer from various erectile dysfunction, not able to last, they found a medical solution for it. And one would have thought, okay, at least with the 1 million they could have come up with this idea, right, in 2013. But they didn't. So it was TTK which came up with this idea, and the patent has been filed. It's not been granted yet, I think. I haven't checked. But this was the innovation there, and now all over the world you will find this kind of a product available, including in India, except with the HLL product, which doesn't have it. Interestingly, if you look at what's happened with the market, I said that you have free condoms, you have subsidized condoms. They only make up 745 million in sales of condoms. On the private side, you have, as of 2019, double that volume being sold in the private market. Now, you think, that doesn't make any sense. What is free should actually be more widely used than something that's really expensive. And just to put it in context, as I said, you can get 3 condoms for 1 rupee, which is virtually free. Then you can go and get condoms for free, which is 0. So you got 0, you got 33 paisa condoms, and then at the top end of the market, you've got 3 condoms for 130 rupees. So if you want to look at the market, you've got 0, 33 paisa, and everything in between, all the way up to 130 rupees for 3. So,
3 condoms, yeah.
So 40 something rupees.
Yeah.
So that is how big the market is in that sense, and how segmented it is. Now, you would have thought, okay, that's great. People are buying twice as much of the expensive stuff as of the free stuff. And somebody, I'm not an economist, I have never been trained, so somebody who can explain this to the class. Why is it that a free product is not being used as much as an expensive product? And the specifications are the same. So you can't even say that is a better product. After all, it is still a balloon, right? It still meets the same specifications. So you have to ask yourself why. Now, the interesting part is that as a corollary of this bright idea that condom is a drug, the government decided that, listen, people are not using condoms because it's too expensive. So what does the government do? The government decides that we should cap the price of the condom.
Of course.
Fabulous.
So, and again, how do we cap the price? We take the average of all the prices and make that the price. We like averages. So we take the average of 12 brands in the market, simple average. So everybody can do it without calculator. Take simple average of 12 brands and make that the ceiling, the price cap. So you have 1/3 of the market which is free. For the 2/3 of the market which is paid, we will have a price cap. Because people are not using condoms. We understand, right? As the government, we understand why they're not using condoms.
It's because the price is too high. Yeah.
Because the price is too high.
That's the reason.
So now we cap the price of the condom. And we have this fantastic idea which says that we will take the average of the top 12 brands, and the average of that will be the cap. Everybody whose price is below that will remain at that. So they can't rise to the cap. They will remain at that price. And everybody who's above the cap will fall under it. So this was in 2013. The government decided that this is the reason why people are not using condoms, is because the price is too high. Obviously, it got challenged, and we were lucky in this case that the judge got it and said, no, it just doesn't make any sense. So please don't. So when we told him that please don't cap it, he said, yes, you're right. It doesn't make any sense. But the government again came around and said, okay, we can't cap the price, but we can freeze the price. So now what they have done is that you don't have to bring it down to the average, but you can't increase it ever again, except at 10% per annum. So irrespective of your cost increase, any other feature in the market, you cannot increase the price of a condom by more than 10% per annum. And that is currently the law, that we have decided everything, specifications up to price. And yet you wonder why it is that people are not using condoms. So we haven't fixed that problem yet. That why is there not enough growth of condoms usage in this country? And the solution that government has found is that we will regulate price, because that we understand is the problem. So so what happens with capacity? So we've dealt with the demand side of it, right? What happens with capacity? There are lots of people who are manufacturing condoms.
So Murli, before you get to that part, I'm sorry to interrupt once again, but there was one question that a student had asked a while ago, but I wanted to speak about it right now because it's kind of related. And I like how the student is thinking. Like there is guerrilla advertising for, say, for example, beer. So you don't actually talk about beer, you talk about beer mugs or stickers or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What about doing the opposite of that, in the sense that why don't we sell what everybody knows to be condoms, but we don't call them condoms? Would that be a legally viable strategy? Forget the marketing challenge, but from a legal perspective, is it possible?
Of course it is. And it's called surrogate advertising.
Right. Surrogate, not guerrilla. Sorry. Yeah, surrogate, yes.
Guerrilla is something different.
Yeah.
Guerrilla marketing is a different concept altogether. That is riding on the back of another product.
Yeah. Nothing official about it is a canonical example. Yes.
Correct. So, as I said, the issue is not so much of advertising. And if we do have a strategy for it, then the product that you really should be looking at is beer. 20 years ago, 20, I'm very old. 30 years ago, beer was not easily available. You had to go to a wine store and buy it like a condom today, which means you'd go to the wine store, which was not a very decent place to go to. It was a pokey place, very undesirable people in a dark, dingy part of the street. And you would ask for beer, and they would wrap it in brown paper bag, and then you would take it home and drink quietly from a steel tumbler. The only other place you could drink was if you were really rich and you were at the Gymkhana clubs. Those were the only two places where beer was consumed. What changed really is the advent of draft beer. And it happened in Bangalore when I was growing up and of beer drinking age, where they decided that, this is the problem with the image of beer. If we change the image of beer and we made it like Coca-Cola, then we would get a huge market. And it was a huge success. So they set up pubs where you could drink with your friends, you could drink with your family. It was seen as a casual activity. And the barrier to lager and draft beer just came down dramatically. And beer sales shot through the roof and have been growing since then for a very long time. And so if we had stayed on the path of being available from the post office, available at the panwala, available all around, it was just a normal thing, just like you'd go and buy toothpaste, you'd go and buy condom, then we would have had a completely different market. If we had taken off these barriers in our heads and made it accessible in our heads, then we would have not worried about using condoms, using the word condom. We won't need surrogate advertising because condom was a perfectly reasonable thing to sell. We would have had sensible advertising. We would not have called it Nirod. We would have found a pleasant word for it, maybe Kamraj. So all of that can change. So when they said Kama Sutra, when you said moods, when you use core, we've got rid of the Nirod name, at least for the private market. Now the aspect of it is, how do we get it to individuals and say it is a common thing? It's okay if the condom falls out of your pocket, out of your wallet. It's a perfectly reasonable thing. It's okay to have a condom vending machine in educational institutions. It's perfectly reasonable to have a condom vending machine in IT parks, in factories. It's perfectly normal thing to do. If we went to that level, which is not very difficult to imagine because we sold it in post office, remember? So it is not a new radical concept. It is a concept that was accepted in the 1950s. So if we just went back to that and made it like a soft drink or toothpaste or, buying mints or buying chocolate or buying any of these things, then clearly people will start thinking of it differently. The new generation will have none of the legacy baggage of the old generation when it comes to condoms. It will start being used. It will start being available, accessible to people. So how many people in your class will be able to name 10 kinds of condoms? I'm very surprised. I did the test once in my office with 25 to 40-year-olds, and they were shocked by what they saw. They couldn't imagine that there are this many kinds of condoms and these many uses for a condom, and why each of them is different. There is it is not just that they're different colors. They have different uses. And so they were shocked that, here is what is available. And they were just unaware of it. So if we got rid of all of that, if it was easily accessible, if it was actually useful as a condom, which means we got rid of the stupid specifications, then perhaps we will start using them more and we will put them to the use that they are intended as a medical device. Then perhaps, things will change. So you don't need surrogate advertising. You just need to advertise it as it is, which is, enhanced pleasure, it's fun, all of that.
No. I think what the question, if I understood right, what he was trying to say is that what if they made, like, let's say a condom that was not made of latex or, something that's out of the regulation, but they didn't call it a condom and they sold it
Exactly.
anyway.
Exactly.
Or will
Sure.
they be taken to court because eventually someone will figure it out and then?
No. So,
Okay.
it's a very good question. It's an excellent question, and that's exactly how a lot of lawyers think of problems. So it's perfect. Is that and this is how how we go about this process. So let me give you an example from somewhere else. Is Kit Kat a biscuit, a wafer, or a chocolate?
Hmm.
This question was answered by the Supreme Court.
I'm guessing taxation related matters.
Yeah.
Exactly. So somebody's already played this game once before. So there is, and if you see Kit Kat, the wrapper, it doesn't say it is a chocolate.
Correct.
So you can very easily do this and say, it is a balloon. I am not claiming it's a condom. It's a balloon. You can call it a sex toy. You can call it anything you like.
Exactly.
And then I don't know what people use it for. Good luck if they want to use it for sex, but it's perfectly legal. You can go off and say, here are balloons, put them wherever they fit, and go about and run ads and ask people to find different uses for it. They can put on their fingers, they can put on their nose, put it wherever you like, and then run a viral campaign. It's perfectly valid to do it. And make it out of polyisoprene, so you can't even claim
exactly.
that it's latex, and then say it's not a condom. I'm never claiming it's a condom. I'm not selling it as a condom. I'm selling it as cap for a pencil. Go for it.
So, but then how? I mean, why isn't anyone doing that? I mean,
I don't know. Everybody. The problem we have in India is everybody is so status quoist that nobody's gone off and perhaps thought of this and willing to risk it. Again, with all of this, there is a risk that somebody in the law is going to come and harass you and prosecute.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're going to go off and say, actually, it's a condom which doesn't meet the specifications in the Drugs Act, and therefore I will prosecute you. I will seize your goods. So that is the risk, and no court is going to be very kind to you. That's the other problem that we have. No judge is going to have a sense of humor that says, "Come on, don't be silly." That's the risk we have.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to spend 100 crores on that on a whim. It's a good idea. I wish somebody took it up and did it.
All right.
One last thing I think, Ashish, I wanted to mention was to end the story of Hindustan Latex, because it's very interesting and important part of this saga is that HLL is only operating at 50% capacity, I said.
Right.
But if you go back the years, there were years when it operated at full capacity, but did not sell it in India. So here you have a public sector undertaking funded with public money, making condoms to sell in 115 countries around the world at a price which is less than cost. So all of us taxpayers are funding someone in South America, lots of people in Africa, having great sex with our money. And so if you look at the accounts, last year, Hindustan Latex made a loss of 140 crores, I think. So it's taking our money, making condoms, and selling it to other people in the world at a loss. So year before last, they made a loss. I'm just trying to see. Yeah,
they've made a profit of 18.5 crores in 2018-19.
That's correct. So they made 18.5 crore profit on revenue of 1,600 crores, 1,682 crores.
Correct.
And last year, on a revenue of 1,200 crores, they made a loss of 105 crores. And if you look at capacity utilization, a couple of years ago, they sold 500 million condoms to Brazil at less than cost. So if you are thinking of economic planning for the country, then you're going to seriously think, what is the point of Hindustan Latex? Make condoms. For who? For Brazil. With whose money? My money. And then make a loss. So it's not as if I'm giving you the money, you made condoms, and the government is making a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
That 500 million condoms that they sold to Brazil, if they had not sold to Brazil, who would have sold to Brazil? The private players.
Private, yeah.
Who all have capacity and are being underbid in a global tender by Hindustan Latex. And the story gets worse. After bidding for that, Hindustan Latex was unable to supply and is now being sued by the Brazilian government.
Sue for what?
For two things. One, delay in supply, so they haven't supplied the quantity and at the time, and for poor quality. And the poor quality thing has also happened with Cuba. It has also happened with Tanzania. It has also happened with Ethiopia. So here, after having got that 1 million, don't forget, and all of our money over the years for R&D, they're not able to make a balloon for the international market and are failing quality tests there.
And this is after passing our fabulous quality tests, is it?
The 300
Yes.
ml.
The 300
Yes,
ml one.
yes. So in their exports, they're failing. Where other countries are saying, we're not going to buy from these guys. They've ruined it for every other private player in India because that they expect that, this is the standard. So it's a real challenge for Indian private players to enter into any of the global markets because the reputation is that this is your biggest condom maker and this is the state office quality run by the government. So you have this real challenge where not only has the government skewed the domestic market, it has skewed the international market in both price as well as quality. So it's a real challenge now for Indian players to bid for those international tenders at a sensible price. Even though they have good quality, they can't bid because latex will bid 1 rupee a condom or 1.5 rupees a condom. Nothing you can do about it. These guys can't even meet at 10 times that price. That's how much difference there is in price. So if the Indians want to sell at $1 a condom, Hindustan Latex will bid it at 1 rupee a condom. You don't stand a chance. It doesn't care, right? It's my money. So from an economist, from an economic analysis, this is what the market looks like. The domestic market, the international market, the various players in the market, and how they compete. And therefore, together with the regulations, what the policy outcome that was envisaged and what actually is happening here as a consequence. It makes a very interesting analysis by somebody, I hope.
Just okay.
I see a lot of questions. Ashish, I can't see them, but I see them
No,
popping
so
up.
there's been a separate conversation going on about points that you have raised, but those that not just but those that I think a lot of the people in class want to ask you, I have been asking you. One question that Shashank raised was about HLL being privatized, but I looked it up and he asked the question. There's been a lot of noise about it, but I don't think concrete action has been taken.
No, and it comes up every now and then, right? That PSUs are going to be privatized, and HLL. If you read HLL's annual report, they've got 100% satisfaction from government. Sorry, that was not how I intended to say it, but they have this MOU with government for being this Maharatna or something like that. And they have got user feedback and they are at 100% with government. So as far as government is concerned, they're doing a great job. And, they're paying out dividends. So nobody cares, right? So I don't think it will be privatized, but, who knows what government is planning.
So the good news, Paras, because you asked the question, there is a business opportunity over here. So
Yes. Huge business opportunity, and there is plenty of manufacturing capacity. So you don't need to manufacture it. That capacity is available. You can outsource the manufacturing completely. All it requires is marketing, branding, and marketing.
Yeah.
So you can be a lean, mean organization with only 3 people, and this is an opportunity for you.
But parents won't allow me, I think.
You make
What
good
are you-
money. What are you
What
saying?
are you saying? What are you saying? Parents won't allow you. It's perfectly legal. And you can explain to your parents that look at the alternative. Look at the alternative. It's either condoms or that blue line on the pregnancy test. I don't know what will shock them more.
Yeah.
So if you put it that way, then condom seems like a good idea. That the blue line on the pregnancy test. So maybe this is the way to explain to them that you have 2 opportunities. If you don't do the condom business, then blue line is very likely very soon. And that might not be a pleasant surprise. It might not be good. That is not the good news they were expecting.
But then, sir, we are back at explaining condoms as a preventive measure.
Sorry, I didn't
Sorry?
get that.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear that, Shashank.
So I'm saying that we are back at explaining condom as a preventive measure. Keep
No, yeah. Yeah.
Whatever sells, Shashank, whatever sells.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so before I tell you and Sally tells you about what the assignment is, we'll leave that for towards the end of the class. But are there any questions that you guys wanted to ask Murli about whatever it is that he's spoken about? The idea behind, at least from the first year's perspective, Sally will speak about the second year's perspective. The idea behind inviting Murli for this talk was essentially to help you understand how all of what I've been teaching this semester has been gloriously wrong as far as the government is concerned. Yes, Sahit, I was coming to that. And the reason I put up cabbages in the title of the message was A, I was going for alliteration. And second, in Thailand, there is this chain of restaurants, I'm not making this up, called Cabbages and Condoms.
Yes.
The idea was that you should be able to buy a condom, as Murli was saying, essentially just make it available wherever you want. So it started off, if I remember correctly, in Pattaya, but is now a very popular chain of restaurants all over Thailand.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where the cabbages come from.
Yeah, and it's a good one. It actually is the point of the whole thing that if you can make the product useful and accessible, then you have a market. And everything you do has to promote that. And the story of today is that the government has done everything to ruin it.
Exactly.
They're trying their damn best to make sure that it can't sell and it won't work. And
Exactly. And all it had to do was stay out of it, right?
yeah.
All we needed government to do was do nothing.
Correct.
And yet, they're constantly doing something in this market.
Yeah.
Constantly. So, right from advertising, procurement, manufacture,
distribution, price caps, exports.
Price caps. So they're intervening frequently in the market. The one thing you should know is they've even set up a retail store. HLL has set up a retail store, like a Samsung flagship store in Kochi. It is one of their innovative ideas that if we have a Moods condom store with all the Moods brands, then it's some great thing. Like you have a Samsung flagship store where this great thing that you can go to, which has all the Samsung products beautifully displayed, and it's their flagship store. They've done that in Kochi. They have a retail store for Moods condoms, and that is in their annual report. I mean, this is all official sources that they have themselves claimed and has said is an achievement. Is they have a Moods retail store in Kochi. You must think, what's the sales? How many people actually walk into that store?
Yeah.
And what is it used for? What is that store used for?
Yeah.
People are dying to get into a Moods condom store. And if you have a big retail store, it will actually get people in there. Maybe it will. I don't know. But I've gone to Kochi and nobody's told me that is a place to go and visit. They do say that in Bangalore, though. They do say the old opera theatre has been converted into a Samsung flagship store. You must go and visit. But I've been to Kochi many times. Nobody has said, recently we've got this Moods condom store. We have, we should go and visit, like the latest model.
So Murli, you'll be glad to know that the showroom also stocks illustrated booklets with sex tips and FAQs in which relevant chapters of the Kama Sutra have been reproduced.
Yes. Very sanskari, of course.
Yeah, and yet nobody's making a beeline for it. So
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Don't forget also that HLL has adopted Hindi as its official language. It is based in Trivandrum.
in Kochi.
It has a store. Its flagship store is in Kochi, and it has fully implemented the government's Hindi-only policy.
Good marketing.
That explains a lot, yeah. So,
Exactly. And they have got some award also for it every year.
Of course they have.
And their annual report is also in Hindi. So it has alternate pages of English, Hindi, English, Hindi, English, Hindi.
yeah, but that I guess is just government regulation, so they can't.
But all their internal memos are also in Hindi. And internal regulations are also in Hindi.
That's HLL for you.
And their chairman is a Mallu guy, Beni George or something like that. It doesn't get more Mallu than that.
Yeah.
But they've adopted Hindi, and for many years now they've been doing it. At last few years they've been doing it. And it is announced that they've got some award also for it from government for 100% in Hindi usage. And I think 4 of their 6 plants are in Kerala. There is one in Indore, 3 of their 6. One in Indore, one in Belgaum, and one more I can't remember. So half their plants and more than 50%, more than 80% of their manufacturing is in Kerala.
Yeah.
But they have adopted Hindi. So I don't think the booklets of the Kama Sutra are in Malayalam. But I will have it checked and get back to you.
We
I
must.
will call up somebody in Kochi and tell them, can you please go to the Mood store and get me some of the literature that they're giving out, and how much of it is in Malayalam. Worth asking.
Yeah, why not? Absolutely. Right.
Excellent. Right.
Any other questions, comments that I should hear?
Don't think
Vedant
so.
has a question. Okay, so there's another question that, let's say, since we were talking about various types of contraceptives and the lack of regulation and everything else, he just wanted to know that are the pregnancy kits also subject to similar rules and standards, or is that something again that's you can just
No, they're not.
they're not, yeah.
No. So they fall under a separate category called diagnostic tools.
Huh.
And there, the global standards are mostly what happens. So they don't have shape, size, all of that stuff
Right.
for pregnancy kits.
Yeah.
Just like I said, they don't have for copper T
Correct.
or for the tubes.
Correct.
So for
Which is far
nothing
more
else.
dangerous. So I mean,
Yeah. So for nothing else, I said for cardiac stents, for heart valves, for nothing. So for the contraceptive pills, it is treated like a drug because it is a drug.
yeah.
And it's quite a dangerous one because it's a hormonal drug. So it's quite potent and you have to deal with it more carefully.
Yeah.
But therefore it makes sense for contraceptive pills to be regulated as drugs. But just because this is also a contraceptive doesn't mean that you're regulating contraceptive pills. So you regulate all contraceptives. It's a worrying thing, but it's absolutely right that diagnostic tools, especially pregnancy kits and all other kits, are dealt with differently in the Drugs Act as diagnostic tools, but not in this manner. So it doesn't say that every pregnancy kit should be in the same way. So you have global standards, and those are the ones that you can buy today from a chemist.
Great. Yep.
What about diaphragms? Is it also similar to the market for condoms?
Yes. diaphragms are female condoms, and HLL makes them. Unfortunately, they're not regulated in this way. So there is no size, shape, inflation, burst, water holding capacity, none of that for a female condom. So again, they just refer to global standards or the Bureau of Indian Standards. So this is unique. It was the first and it remains the only one where you have diagrams and all of these things.
Okay. Paras has an excellent question. So Murli, I'll try and answer it, and then maybe you might want to add or subtract to my answer. His question is, what is the real objective of this conversation? So,
Ashish, you to sell cabbages, which clearly in Pune is not a favorite vegetable. I'll give you creative recipes for cabbages. That was the point of this. Unfortunately, we got distracted by condoms.
So, Paras, I'll try and answer the question, see if it makes sense or not. The idea basically was whatever it is that I and Saili have been teaching you guys, Saili for both batches, I of course only for the first years, how much of it makes sense given how the government has practiced or tried to set up, destroy, use whatever verb you will, the market for condoms in India. So everything that I have taught you this semester has not been applied in the case of the market for condoms. Not just not been applied, I would argue the government has gone in the opposite direction and has been doing so for decades together.
Yeah.
So if you want to maximize utility, if you want to maximize sales, if you want to increase positive externalities, however, whatever concept it is that you've learned, it seems to have not been applied in the case of the market for condoms. How to not set up a market for something is one way of taking a look at this class.
Yeah.
And that would be my answer. But Murli, whatever it is that you want to add to what I just said.
I think, Ashish, I'll only say what we discussed last Friday when we thought of this class, which is that this is, you take all of these facts and then you apply every known economic concept to it and principle to it. And, to me, I'd love to see the whole 100 odd people who are in this discussion.
Yeah.
How many can they identify? And say, this is like when we do compliance audits, how many laws have you violated? Do the same thing for this fact situation and say, here is a case study of condoms in India. And then say, how many economic concepts have been violated? Well understood and accepted and non-controversial economic concepts. This is like, leave the market alone, government intervention in the market. Why does government intervene in the market? What is the impact of government intervention in the market? On the demand
Excessive
side, on the
stipulations
supply
about
side.
product specification, on and on and on. Yeah.
So to me, that was how, Ashish, you and I came to this idea of this talk, is that it will be an interesting exercise. And I said to you then that it was an exercise that was given to me when I was in law school, is we were given a fact situation and asked to apply different philosophies and say, could we identify from this piece of legislation how many different philosophies of law, which we call jurisprudence, as concepts were available in this. So show me examples of these various theories in this piece of legislation. And it was a very simple exam. It was an open book exam, and the question was very simple. It was only one line. And you had 2 hours or 3 hours, I think 2 hours to write your answer. You could ask anybody, phone a friend, whatever, sit in the library and look at this one line which said, please analyze and list all the jurisprudential concepts that you can identify in the National Law School of India University Act. That was one line, just one question for the whole final exam. So that was the inspiration for this assignment.
Exactly. And Murli, I told you that I'm going to shamelessly copy this exam. So for all the FIBSC students on the call, that is your second assignment.
Yes.
Tell me what principles of economics have been violated in the case study that Murli just discussed. That's it. That's your assignment.
Same. And for third sem people, it's everything you've learned in sem 1, sem 2 and sem 3. everything that I have done with you over the past year and a half.
Yeah. It's a beautiful way of making it tangible. Otherwise you've learned all these concepts on the blackboard.
Yeah.
How do you apply it to the real world, and then understand how decisions are being taken? Then you realize they're really relevant. And this is a good example of why it is not just theoretical. Economics is not just theory. It actually has a real impact on people's lives. And in this case, really lives, right? Some people shouldn't have been born, but for bad economics.
Yep.
That's the moral of this story.
Yeah.
If you had applied better economics, you would have perhaps had, some people who shouldn't have been born wouldn't have been born.
Yeah. I mean, so much for it thinking about the right policy at the right time and then just absolutely going in the opposite direction. I mean,
Yep, it started off very well.
Yeah.
Started off very well. And
The
for
idea was-
those...
The
and
road
those
to
who are
hell is
following
paved
it-
with.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
for those who are keen to blame Nehru, it is entirely his fault. He is the one who brought condoms to India. And it was his cabinet minister who brought it to India.
TTK. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can blame Nehru entirely for bringing the condoms and selling it to post offices. It was during his time that condoms were sold in post offices. So
There's an excellent biography of TTKs. I haven't read it yet. I should.
I haven't read it, I must confess. But the book that you can read, which has a little bit of this story, there isn't a lot of story of condoms. But the book that has it is called Disrupt and Conquer. It's the book of which is written by the current chairman of the TTK group.
I think that's the one I had in mind. Yeah.
Correct. Maybe. So that is the book which is the whole story of how TTK Prestige effectively
Oh yes.
became a
Same
billion-dollar
Same
business.
one. Yeah.
A billion-dollar business. And the story of cookers is similar. For the next year, perhaps we can move from condoms to cookers. The same story exists in cookers as well. A little more successful because the government has not made cookers yet.
Yeah.
But if,
Thankfully.
So far.
but if government had a PSU that was making cookers, we would have had the same situation as condoms.
Exactly.
But that's for another day.
Yeah.
The economics of cookers.
And Murli, I'm very happy with the fact that the alliterative theme will continue. We're still sticking with C.
Yes.
Can stick with the same.
And cabbages work well.
Yes, absolutely.
Cabbages and cookers work well.
Cabbages and cookers is fine.
Yeah. Cabbage soup. The most insipid thing you can ever think of is cabbage soup. Yes, so we can have that.
Absolutely.
The next semester we can have Ashish sending out emails saying we're going to discuss cabbage soup.
Cabbage.
And I have a similar story about cookers. So there is, from condoms to cookers.
Fabulous.
Excellent. All right.
All right, great.
Murli, as always, thank you so much.
No, it's
Yeah.
great fun here.
It's a pleasure.
I hope your students liked it as much. It's an unusual topic. I didn't know if this is what they expected when they came to listen to me talk about
Hopefully.
cabbages. But
Hopefully
I
not.
hope it was a little better than they expected.
Absolutely. So as Jannavi just mentioned, this is definitely not something that they were expecting.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank
It's
you
always
so much.
good fun,
Murli.
Ashish. It's always good fun to come to your
And-
class.
Whenever you come to Pune next, Jan
Yes.
Seva
Oh,
is
yes.
Absolutely. I hope it will be soon, as I said.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I enjoyed your last class as well. It was good fun, and so I look forward. Pune is a good trip for me. I look forward to it.
Great.
Definitely.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much, Murli.
Yes.
Thank you,
Bye,
sir.
guys.
Cool. So for everybody, I'll send up a official announcement thingaming or whatever it is about the assignment. But that basically is your assignment. So you just have to tell
Yeah.
me what all went wrong with the market for condoms in India. That's it.
Yes.
So both Sally and I will send out the specifications, group hai, ya individual hai on the
Huh.
classroom. The
Yeah.
details are can be filled out later. But that was the idea.
But you know what you're supposed to do, so start thinking about it. I mean, don't wait for my question to come.
Correct.
Yeah, it'll come.
Especially memorable class, and yes, hopefully Murli will be back. If not this semester, at least the next one, and maybe we'll learn about cookers.
Yes.
Cool. Enjoy Friday evening, everybody. Division 1, I'll see you tomorrow at 10:30.
My people, Monday.
So Paras, I'll put up the details by tomorrow morning. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll send it out.
All right. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.